On a freezing island where they never bury the dead in the ground, my job was to watch over the salt graves. One night, I tried to steal a gold ring from a cold, drowned body, but when I touched it, the hand turned burning hot and the eyes snapped open. What I discovered next would drag me into a dark stone cave under the cliffs, a place where the dead are still awake, where my own sister is no longer human, and where my own skin is slowly turning into solid, cold stone. If you are listening to this, do not drink the tea.
On Greygill Isle, the cold sea fog did not just fall, it crawled over the dark cliffs like a wet tongue, ready to swallow everything. Inside the salt mortuary, the air was heavy and hard to breathe. Silas Thorne stood over a long stone trough. He held a wooden shovel. In the trough lay Master Ronald, a rich merchant. Ronald's boat had crashed against the rocks 2 days ago. His skin was swollen and blue from the water. His fingers were buried deep in the coarse grey salt. On this island, they did not bury dead people in the dirt. The ground was only hard rock and ice. Instead, they packed the bodies in salt for 40 days to stop them from rotting. After 40 days, they threw them into the sea. Silas reached down. He touched the merchant's cold hand. On the middle finger, there was a thick gold ring. That gold was worth enough to buy 3 years of travel on a ship. It was Silas's only ticket off this terrible island. It was his chance to take his quiet, sick sister Clara away from this place. Silas gripped the ring. He twisted it against the stiff skin. He pulled hard. Suddenly, he felt a strange burning heat under his fingers. Silas froze.
The hand was not cold. Deep inside, the flesh was burning hot. Before Silas could pull away, the merchant's eyes snapped open. The merchant's eyes were red and full of terror. His jaw was locked tight, covered in white salt crystals, but a wet whistling sound came from his throat. He was alive. Silas fell backward. His shovel hit the stone floor with a loud noise. He gasped and covered his mouth. If the village leader, the bailiff, heard him, Silas would be killed. The law of the island was simple. What the sea takes belongs to the island. If you touch a body in the salt, you are hanged. If you hide a living person, it is worse. "Quiet," Silas whispered. He leaned forward. Outside, the wind screamed. From the cliffs above, he heard the miners' tools hitting the stone. Clink, clink, clink. The merchant could not breathe, but his eyes moved quickly, looking at Silas in fear. Silas touched his shoulders. He felt a tiny, fast heartbeat behind the man's jaw. "I will not let them put you back in the salt," Silas whispered, "but you must be completely quiet." Silas pulled the paralyzed man out of the salt. He wrapped him in a wool blanket and put him on a cart under empty salt bags. He wheeled the cart out into the freezing fog to an old cellar at the north end of the island. He did not look back.
For 3 days, Silas hid the merchant in the dark cellar. He stole candles from the church, rubbed fat onto the man's stiff joints, and gave him water. By the 3rd night, the merchant could speak a little. The merchant lay on dry straw. His voice was a dry whisper, like salt scraping against stone. "They knew," Ronald whispered. Silas leaned closer. "Who knew?" "The bailiff, the elders." Ronald's lips barely moved. "My ship did not crash by accident. They turned on false lights to trick my ship onto the rocks." Silas shook his head. "They are thieves, yes. The island is poor. We steal cargo to survive." "No!" Ronald's hand shot out. He grabbed Silas's sleeve. His grip was shockingly hard, like an iron trap. Silas tried to pull away, but he could not move. "They did not want the cargo," Ronald whispered. "They wanted the flesh." Silas went cold. "What do you mean?" "They put me in the salt to keep me quiet, not because I was dead, because I was already changing." "Changing into what?" Ronald rolled up his sleeve. Silas jumped back. The skin on the merchant's arm was no longer blue. It was a solid, shiny white crystal. Silas touched it. It was hard like rock. Ronald bent his fingers. The skin did not wrinkle. It clicked. Tiny cracks appeared in the white skin, then closed again with a wet, grinding sound. "What is that?" Silas asked. "That is what they are mining," Ronald whispered. "Not salt. They are digging deep into the dark stone under this island. There is something buried there, something ancient, a giant skeleton sleeping in the rock." Ronald stopped to gasp for air. "They take black marrow from its bones.
It is a thick black liquid. They drink it. It cures all sickness and makes you live for hundreds of years, but it slowly turns your body into stone. Over many years it locks you inside your own body. You can still see and think, but you cannot move. Silas could barely breathe. The salt mortuary, the troughs, are not for dead people, Ronald said. They are for the old villagers who cannot no longer move. They keep them in the salt so their stone bodies do not crack apart. Silas felt dizzy. He pressed his hand against the wall to stand up. That is crazy. Salt is just our trade. Look at your hands, Silas. Silas looked down at his fingers. Ronald whispered, and look at your sister. Why can't she speak? How long has she really been silent?
Silas ran. He ran through the thick white fog. His chest burned. The cold air felt heavy and sharp, like breathing broken glass. He kicked open the door of his cottage. "Clara, pack your things. We are leaving tonight in the rowboat. We cannot stay here." The cottage was silent. A single candle burned on the table. Clara sat in her rocking chair by the fire, her back to him. Her long, pale hair was perfectly still. "Clara?" Silas walked forward. He touched her shoulder. She turned slowly. Her face was beautiful and white like marble, but her eyes were completely white. No pupils, just solid, milky white. "She cannot hear you, Silas." Silas spun around. Thomas Vance, the bailiff, stood in the dark corner. He wore his heavy coat and held his walking stick. Behind him stood two miners with sharp picks. "Vance," Silas stepped in front of his sister. "What did you do to her?" "We did nothing," Vance said. His boots made the floor creak. "She did it to herself years ago." "She lost her voice to a fever 10 years ago," Silas shouted. "She did not lose her voice. She died," Vance said. His eyes were cold and white like stone. The coughing sickness took her lungs. She lay dead in that bed. You were just a boy, crying. We wanted to help. We gave her the first drop of the black marrow.
Vance walked to Clara. He tapped her cheek with his fingernail. Clink. A hollow, stony sound echoed in the room. Clara did not blink. She sat perfectly still. Her chest did not move. Her hands sat in her lap like carved rock. "Her lungs are solid salt," Vance said quietly. "Her heart is a chunk of red ironstone. She only moves because the black marrow flows in her veins. She stayed here, pretending to be your loving sister, just to keep you here." "To keep me here?" Silas asked. "Greygill always needs a salt ward to take care of the bodies and carry the gold." Silas stared. "The gold?" "You thought you were clever, stealing rings." Vance smiled. His teeth were grey and worn down to the bone. "We put those rings there for you, Silas. We wanted you to believe you could escape, so you would keep working." Silas felt a freezing weight in his chest. He looked at his hands. His knuckles were swollen. He tried to make a fist, but his joints hurt and ground together. He pulled up his sleeve. Under the skin, a faint white crystal pattern was growing. "She put the marrow in your tea," Vance said softly. "Every morning. For 5 years. You belong to the salt now, Silas, just like us. Drink your tea, or we will drag you down without it."
They dragged Silas into the dark cliffs. Silas tried to fight, but his body was too heavy. His muscles were turning to stone. The guards did not even need to hold him tight. His arms felt like heavy rocks. They walked deep down into the dark belly of the island. The air was hot, wet, and smelt of rusty iron. The tunnel walls were made of giant bones. Enormous ribs of an ancient monster stretched high into the darkness. Large pipes covered in white salt ran along the floor like veins, carrying a thick black liquid. In the center of the giant cave was the source. It was a heart, a giant heart made of solid stone, hanging by thick cords. It did not beat. It ground together with a loud, heavy noise that shook the cave. With every grind, thick black oil dripped into large stone pools below. The marrow. Vance stood at the edge of the platform. The miners pushed Silas to his knees.
The stone floor hurt, but Silas felt no pain. He only felt heavy. "The heart needs a new helper," Vance said, holding a sharp iron knife. "Every 50 years, the salt ward must join the heart. Your skin and flesh will melt in the salt pools, but your strong will keep the marrow flowing. The village will live. Clara will keep moving. You will save her, Silas. This is what you wanted."
Silas looked at Clara. She stood near the edge, her white eyes staring into the dark. She was a beautiful, empty puppet. Then Silas looked at the stone heart. He looked at the pipes. He followed the pipes with his eyes along the floor and up the wall. He understood something. Some of those pipes did not carry the black marrow. They carried something else from the sea to clean the system. It was highly concentrated, pressurized, salty water. Acidic water. Strong enough to melt minerals, strong enough to melt stone. The miners pressed Silas's head onto the altar. Vance raised the knife. Silas laughed. It was a dry, rattling laugh. Silas felt a sudden, massive strength. His arms were almost completely turned to stone now, but the stone gave him power. His arms could not break because they were no longer bone. He pulled his arms. The iron chains exploded. The stone altar cracked in two. Silas grabbed Vance's wrist. The bailiff's arm bones crushed like dry gravel. Silas did not hit him again. Instead, he grabbed a guard's pickaxe. His stone fingers locked onto the wooden handle. He turned toward the wall. He aimed at the pipe carrying the salt water from the sea. "What are you doing?" Vance screamed. Silas swung the pickaxe.
It was not black marrow that came out. It was a giant wave of highly pressurized, acidic seawater. The water flooded the floor and sprayed directly onto the beating stone heart. The heart screamed. It was a terrifying, grinding sound of stone melting under acid. The heart began to dissolve and break apart into grey mud. "No!" Vance screamed. "Our life is lost!" The reaction was instant. As the heart melted, the black marrow inside the villagers turned to water. Vance tried to run at Silas, but his legs broke, his knees turned to white dust, his face cracked, his skin peeling away like dry salt. His whole body collapsed into a pile of grey sand on the floor. The miners fell next, turning to dust before they could even scream. Silas turned. Clara stood near the edge as the cave began to collapse. Rocks fell from the ceiling. Silas ran to her and grabbed her hand. It was freezing cold. Clara. For one short second, her white eyes cleared. The white colour faded, and he saw the warm hazel eyes from their childhood. Her lips moved. She did not make a rattling sound. She let out a soft, human sigh. Silas. Then she turned to solid crystal. The salt in her veins froze completely. Her skin became smooth, beautiful, see-through white quartz. The fear was gone from her face. She looked peaceful. Silas picked up her heavy stone body. As rocks fell around him, he climbed the stone stairs. His own legs ground with every step. His neck and jaw felt heavy and stiff.
He reached the beach just as the sun rose through the fog. The island was completely silent. The mines had collapsed. Nothing was left of the villagers but grey sand blowing in the wind. Silas carried Clara to the small wooden boat on the black sand. He laid her down gently and crossed her crystal hands over her chest. Then he pushed the boat into the cold sea. The water caught the boat and pulled it out into the wide ocean. The morning sun hit Clara's cheek, making her shine like a star. Silas tried to take a step back onto the beach. His left foot could not move. He looked down. His leg had fused to the black rock, stone meeting stone. He did not fight it. He just watched the boat grow smaller and smaller on the grey sea until it disappeared. The cold wind blew against his chest, but he did not feel cold. Slowly, the white crystals grew up his throat. They closed his lips. They closed his eyes. The last thing Silas Thorne felt before his heart turned to silent stone was not sadness or fear. It was the complete peace of a man who has finally put down a heavy weight he had been carrying for a very long time. And there he remained, the salt ward of Greygill Isle, a silent stone guard on an empty shore, watching a sea that would never bring his sister back.